Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into a new edition of the Smoak Break podcast, talking college football with you a couple of times a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'm your host, Craig Smoak, back for a Tuesday edition as we are now in week 9 of the college football season. And what a furious, fast, and frenetic and fun week 8 it was. College football, for as chaotic as it may be at times, particularly off the field, is still maintaining its chaos on the field, if not amplifying it. And when the two get put together, it makes for an incredible combination of a product for fans to watch. And so right now, as we are here in week 9 with 2 more coaching firings now official and more still to come, we are now up to 11 head coaching vacancies before we even reach the end of October. And we also have just seen a top 25 that flipped a new spot in every single slot except for number 1 overall, where Ohio State still remains supreme, but as other contenders fall to the wayside one by one each week, and that was the case again this past week, except for Ohio State, obviously remaining unscathed. Everything else seems to be completely up for grabs, and anything seems to be possible when it comes to a lot of these outcomes. And it all got started with a wild Friday night and carried over to the rest of the weekend. And man, what a week 8 it was, and what a season we've already had, and what a stretch run we are setting ourselves up for. So going back to just kind of how the weekend kick-started, as we'll kind of look back here on a Tuesday and look ahead on the Thursday edition. But that Miami loss to Louisville just set the table for everything to go crazy, and for everything to just basically be up for grabs there over the entire weekend. 24-21, the Cardinal beat the Hurricanes, and that wasn't the only result on Friday night that was of upset value, but Louisville, man, playing really tough, really nice, and really some big-time performances from the likes of their stud wide receiver, Chris Bell. Miller Moss, a familiar name to many from his USC tenure, has done some good things at Louisville. Just haven't really heard about him, I feel like, as much as when he was under Lincoln Riley's tutelage. But in a battle of quarterbacks, he had the slightly better performance than Carson Beck in terms of scores and yardage and things like that. Beck a little bit more in yardage, but really a stat line that looked almost identical, save Miller Moss had a couple of touchdowns. Carson Beck did not. But where it really looked skewed in one direction was obviously the 4 interceptions for Carson Beck, including the game-sealing interception there at the end when Miami still had a chance to go down and potentially tie the game or even go and win the game. But pick number 4 on the day for Carson Beck was the death nail after the previous 3 obviously interrupted drives, but didn't necessarily lead to an onslaught or any points for Louisville for the most part. Just flipped the momentum and took opportunities out of Miami's hands, but 4 interceptions. Miller Moss, meanwhile, doesn't turn over the ball. So 23-25 completions, 37-35 attempts, 248, 271 yards, 2 touchdowns, no touchdowns in the case of Moss to Beck there. But yeah, the 0 to 4 interceptions, that really the key mark there for Louisville Cardinals. Neither team able to really run the ball all that well. Louisville just a shade over 100 yards. Miami only 63 on 24 carries. So didn't have the ball a lot because they kept turning it over and weren't effective with it on the ground when they did have their opportunities. But yeah, the turnover is really the key in this one. And Louisville now 5-1, 2-1 in the ACC. Miami with their first loss on the year drops them in the rankings and takes them out of that unbeaten club, of which now only about a handful remain. And that was a really fun way to start off the weekend. Had tons of other action, obviously, across the country, and the SEC with maybe the most exciting and fun race right now. But before we even got into Saturday, you had Nebraska amidst all this talk about Matt Rhule and the Penn State job, and will it be his, and is he interested? And he's coming out with a statement on the McAfee show and this and that. And, well, it was only fitting and only very Nebraska-like and Matt Rhule-like for the Huskers to then turn around and lose 24-6 on the road against the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So Nebraska with their second loss of the year, now 2-2 in the Big Ten, and now behind Minnesota, not only record-wise but head-to-head-wise in the Big Ten standings. Not to mention all the rest of the teams throughout the league, but put yourself behind the 8 ball when it came to the Minnesota part of the equation. with Nebraska, and really I think did your team a disservice just with the way all of the talk was sort of swirling last week. You be okay, I think, if you're a Nebraska fan and they come out, lost a last-second field goal or something of that nature, but instead they just kind of get beat up the way that they did. It certainly feels like there was some distractions going on, and that's just kind of a typical loss for Nebraska these days. But 2 top 25 teams going down on Friday alone, and that just kind of let us know we were in for a bit of a dizzying weekend. And then on Saturday, the SEC had some special games cooked up. Georgia, another upset, although albeit slightly, 43-35 over Ole Miss. Just very impressed by Gunnar Stockton, who had 4 touchdowns in this game, and just a really fun game. Felt like maybe Ole Miss was going to be able to pull off the upset on the road, but I felt as the game got into the later stages, Stockton played his part to near perfection, whereas Trinidad Chambliss, as good as he's been, looked like a guy who maybe got a little bit nervous at times or felt the pressure a little bit. Still had a nice game. But just watching him just kind of felt like maybe it ramped up a little bit at the end. And Georgia has proven to be a team, no matter who they're playing, no matter how talented the other side is, they just seem to have a flair for the second half, for the fourth quarter, and for the final minutes to be able to pull out a win. And now 6-1 overall, 4-1 in the SEC with that 43-35 win, a massive fourth quarter propelling the Bulldogs 17 points in that final frame to victory. And so a brutal loss, a first loss there for Ole Miss, but a great win for Georgia and a fun game. And we're not seeing the end of these two teams by any stretch, but a great win by the Bulldogs there. Bama and Tennessee, the Bama machine just keeps rolling. Kalen DeBoer, for all the hair pulling and hand wringing at the beginning of the season, 37-20 over the Vols in a near top 10 matchup. Number 6 Alabama over the number 11 Tennessee Vols in this one. And another great chapter in this rivalry. Bama able to separate this thing a little bit right before the half, and then a back and forth battle there in the second half. Low scoring, not as explosive as a lot of the other games that we saw necessarily, particularly there in the second half, but a really fun game to watch, and a huge performance by Ty Simpson once again, who continues to be mightily impressive. Joey Aguilar had a nice enough game as well. Nothing too gaudy, but really Simpson just super efficient, taking care of the football, and just making some big-time throws and some big-time decisions. And in a game where both these two teams are very likely to have an opportunity to meet up again in the college football playoff or both punch their ticket there, Tennessee does need to be careful. Now, 2-2 in the SEC, 5-2 overall, whereas Alabama, 4-0 in the league, is feeling great about things right now. Really nice win for DeBoer and company, who have now reeled off 6 straight, including 4 straight against the top 25. And then also out of the SEC, again, I said it was a big weekend for them, a game much hyped up going into this weekend. Diego Pavia and Vandy with the 31-24 victory. Another upset, number 17 over number 10, so nothing too crazy, but an upset nonetheless. 31-24, Vandy gets the win at home there in Nashville, and able to just hold on to this one in a game where Pavia was super efficient, 14-22 for 160 and a score, but 2 scores on the ground, nearly 100 yards rushing for the electric factory that is Diego Pavia. And Clark Lee and Vanderbilt with a massive win as they continue to just slowly but surely, and in some cases not so slowly, but as they continue to just add to that resume they've been building up the last couple of years. Vandy in a really good spot now at 6-1 overall, 2-1 in the SEC, and LSU falling now in the rankings. Need to be careful. 5-2 overall, 2-2 in the SEC. So the Tigers have dug themselves a little bit of a hole, and all these jobs opening up. You wonder how long down the list you need to go to see Brian Kelly's name, especially when they've got A&M and Alabama, a trip to Tuscaloosa, home against the Aggies first, though. But those 2 games coming up here now in the next couple of weeks. And then at the end of the year, you travel to Norman. So possible that there's a couple more losses out there here in the regular season for LSU and for Brian Kelly. And you just know that that would add to that gumbo of speculation about him and just his future and how long we're talking. And I know from talking to some LSU folks, including our own Garrett Ross producer, not a lot of people real happy with the state of the Tigers. A lot of people would trade to be in their shoes, but this isn't necessarily the standard for LSU losing to Vanderbilt ever at all, no matter how good Vandy's story may be. But yeah, cool to see Pavia and company take care of business once again. And week 9 had a lot of other results. I mean, stemming from outside our handful of picks each week in some of those big games I ran down. BYU with an excellent win over Utah in that Big 12 race as part of the latest chapter of the Holy War. Nice competitive game, but BYU really felt, no matter what the scoreboard said, like they were pretty much in control of that game, and they had a different switch that they could go to and flip as opposed to the Utes, particularly in the passing game. But Bear Bachmeier, super impressive. BYU now the only unbeaten team in the Big 12. And as far as overall record, you also have Cincinnati unbeaten in league play and just the one loss overall on the year. But those two teams now taking the reins in the Big 12. You have some others, including Texas Tech, that still have opportunities, but just a really nice win for BYU. They're 7-0 with a true freshman quarterback and an excellent group of players defensively, offensively, and special teams-wise surrounding Bear Bachmeier. So we've seen contender after contender kind of go down. From preseason hopeful to the team we thought might run the table this year based on how things started out, and we'll get to them in just a moment. But here we are crossing the halfway point, and it's BYU and Cincinnati holding the reins of the Big 12. So Holy War lived up to expectations. And then also out of that league, I mentioned it briefly, but Texas Tech falling for the first time this season, and this to Arizona State with Sam Leavitt back in the saddle at quarterback for them. Excellent win for Kenny Dillingham and company. A game that looked like it was going to be theirs. Then Tech mounts this furious comeback, and you think, here's some Texas Tech magic. They're a team of destiny. They're going to come pull this one from the jaws of defeat and win again and stay unbeaten. And Kenny Dillingham and Sam Leavitt and company had different ideas in mind, able to get that late score to peel the lead back and then hold on to it and get the massive victory that wasn't entirely unpredictable, but just didn't seem very likely. Likely it was or wasn't leading into it. Reality is that Arizona State did get that big win and make the Big 12 race that much more interesting. So, Tech missing Baron Morton certainly in this game. People, including myself, have had debates about Will Hammond and whether Tech would be okay if he had to run the show or if he should be running the show. And I think after Saturday, or as I called it and said it on the show, you can call that Baron Morton Appreciation Day, because I think we all have a much greater appreciation for Baron Morton. Not that it was all Will Hammond's fault by any means, but just Tech's slightly different with the experience that he has, and I think that would have come in handy against a team like Arizona State, who came up with a great game plan, and hats off to Kenny Dillingham and company. And that's just scratching the surface of the results this weekend. And those are like 5, 6, 7 games I just reeled off, and that would have been enough, but not to mention there's like 30 other games that happened across the country, some blowouts, some not surprising. But man, when you like deal it out percentage-wise, it was one thing after another this weekend in the best possible kind of way. College football parity has arrived, and it's actually, I think, great for the sport. Meanwhile, parity has led to, along with other parts of this game, a lot of craziness off the field. And certainly that's not any different this week. 2 more firings in the books. Florida now open with the decision to move on finally after a couple years of speculation from Billy Napier. So the Gators are in the job hunt. And then Colorado State as well, parting ways with Jay Norvell after they just weren't showing a lot of upward momentum and trajectory, getting ready to head into the Pac-12, deciding it's time to make a change. So Colorado State, another job that has opened up as well. So those are jobs 10 and 11 on the year that are now open. And certainly with that Florida job, you can go ahead and throw that one all the way up to the top of the list and the top of the pile, where they will be competing with teams like Penn State, for example, for coaches in this cycle, or potentially some crossover there as far as interviews go. But yeah, Florida definitely hops up there into that top group of candidates for who wants this job and who can we fill for this job. The intrigue around that one will be pretty fun. So what an incredible weekend, news-wise, results-wise, upsets-wise, rankings-wise. The top 25 flipped around on its head outside of number 1 Ohio State. more than a handful of incredible games and upsets. And yes, even a couple more coaching firings. And we still have a few weeks to go. And we still have another show to go this week where we will look ahead at week 9 and the big banger games and top 25 games and potential upset games. And I'll also look at the potential coaching firings we could be hearing about on the other side of this weekend as well. But what a weekend to reflect on and to continue talking about even further in depth each day on 365 Sports. If you wouldn't mind, please hit the like and subscribe button on this Smokestack College Football channel, but also check me out 3 to 6 on 365 Sports YT and support us over there as well, where we get to dive deeper into results like this. But man, what a fun weekend to talk about and a fun weekend to preview coming up the next time around. Gotta love the chaos. We'll embrace it, and we still have a ways to go, which I'm excited about. Enjoy your week, everybody. Until next time, until the Thursday preview edition, I'm Craig Smoak, and this has been the Smoak Break College Football Podcast.